Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
President Biden said that he needed Congress to act for him to secure the border. But yet we just saw this month, the reports came out that not one single illegal alien that tried to come across our southern border was released into the United States.
That is Senator Marc Moen. Immigration. The border is actually sealed. First time in my lifetime, probably yours. Now time to fix the rest.
Number 2.
Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people to uphold the Constitution. When that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy.
Not sure what he's getting at, but it just underlines the Dems being in disarray. And the complaints are coming from the left, by the left. We bring you inside the story of the infighting that could keep the House in GOP hands.
Number 1.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other.
And there he is, the President of the United States yesterday, Willie Rooney. I don't think he's met with the press yet today. President Trump knows the attack plan, according to the Wall Street Journal. The thing is, will he decide to do it? What would be the objective, and what are the risks? Let's bring that all to Jennifer Griffin, who has been a part of military actions and reporting on them for decades. I'm not saying you're old, Jennifer. I'm just saying you're experienced.
I am a little bit old, actually. And this last week is making me older.
Oh, my goodness. And, it is for someone like you who knows that Iran has been a problem, an issue, a challenge for so many different administrations. What are your thoughts now that this battle could be days away, or the strike?
Well, I think what's really interesting, Brian, you mentioned how long Iran has been a problem. It's been a problem since 1979. And look at the U.S. aircraft carrier that is now steaming its way from the Pacific to the Middle East. It's the USS Nimitz. That USS Nimitz, which is going to be decommissioned next year, it was the aircraft carrier that when the U.S. military launched an attempt to rescue those hostages in Tehran in 1979, it was the aircraft carrier that they launched from. So we are talking about decades of history of an unresolved issue with a regime that has threatened not just Americans, but also, of course, Israel. In terms of the U.S. military and the decision-making right now at the White House, the president, it's clear from my reading of the tea leaves, he approved and the operation in general that would set up U.S. military assets, and it takes some time to get them into place, U.S. military assets to strike the Fordo underground nuclear enrichment site. That's the main nuclear enrichment site that is 300 feet underground at least in that mountain south of Tehran. Only the B-2 bomber, which only the U.S. military has, which is based at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, and the massive ordnance penetrators, the MOP bombs, or 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators. These are bunker busters that can go at least 200 feet into underground. So the president now has a decision in terms of giving the final order, and that is what he is weighing right now. He's approved the operation. You can see that because you had dozens of air refueling planes move into Europe and into the Middle East. We saw those on flight trackers. We know that the F-22s, Raptors, they took off from Langley Air Force Base yesterday, dozens of those to the Middle East to be based there. They have ramped up in terms of sending an extra aircraft carrier. That will be a few more days before that carrier is in position. They have the Fifth Fleet, which is based in Bahrain, has sent all of its naval warships out to sea to protect them. So we're seeing everything move into position, but the president has the final decision whether to give the order for those B-2s to take off from Whiteman Air Force Base. And that, we understand, has not been decided yet. The president will meet with his National Security Council in about 15 minutes at the White House in the Situation Room. That is for the second day in a row that he's meeting with his national security advisors. He wants, this is not an easy decision. Tactically, the U.S. military can very easily carry out this mission. Those B-2s and that 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb, they can strike at a pinpoint target, and can they take out the whole underground complex? Not clear, but they certainly certainly can destroy much of it. So the tactical part of this is easy. The question always in launching military strikes, particularly against another country that you're not at war with, is what comes next. And what I've seen from watching the Israeli operation for the last week is that there seems to be a little bit of mission creep. The goal of taking out Iran's nuclear program and ballistic missile sites, that they are accomplishing on a daily basis. We were told from the beginning it would be about a 2-week mission, but now we hear the defense minister of Israel talking about targeting the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the top leader of Iran, and that starts to move into regime change territory. So does the U.S. get involved with that? Obviously, there's a lot of reticence on the part of really every American to get involved with another open-ended conflict in the Middle East that involves regime change.
I think the bombing of the hospital last night, knowing that these can be somewhat precise, the rockets the missiles that they're sending over, make them think, and that gave the defense minister the statement, I'll just paraphrase, saying he cannot exist, meaning the Grand Ayatollah. And I do take them at their word that they know where he is.
I think that is a fair assessment, and I think, but as we know, it's sometimes. I mean, look, the Israelis, what they have done in the first 24 hours and in the days since of that operation, the incredible ability to get behind enemy lines, to have people on the ground, those drones that were secretly positioned inside Iran that launched on the first night. It reminded me of the Ukrainians and what they did in Russia just 3 weeks ago. Extraordinary ingenuity and precision. I think I've talked to, in fact, one of the pilots from 1981, the F-16 Israeli pilot who took out the Osirak reactor in Iraq. I've been speaking to him a lot, and he is one of the architects of the Israeli plan to take out Iran's nuclear program. And even he is in awe of what the Israeli military was able to accomplish in the first 24 hours.
So my sense is, number one, the Fordo bombing, if the bunker busters take place, is it true? It's true they have never been used before, correct? This is the largest bomb short of nuclear. Never been used before. It'll be more than one.
Never been used in combat.
Yeah.
Yes, they've been tested as recently as last year, I'm told. But, they are built to strike about 200 feet underground. Now, the way they work is that a B-2 carries 2 of them, and so you strike once with one bomb. That kind of opens a cavity, and then the second bomb they hope to guide right through that same cavity and get a deeper underground and a large explosion. It has not been used in combat before, and so there are questions about how deep does it actually go. I mean, those mountains, the mountain at Fordo where this is based, I mean, we don't know. We've heard estimates that the facility is 300 feet underground. The bomb is estimated to go 200 feet underground. That's 100 feet short. But there are some unknowns, and there is a lot of confidence, I would say, at the top chain of the U.S. military chain that the bunker buster, this MOP bomb, could take care of the Fordo complex. So they are feeling very confident. But again, it's always about what comes next. So
I know that they always do the worst case scenarios. They say, okay, we pull off the bombing, it happens, they surrender. That's one. Number two is they're going to look to retaliate. I just want you to hear what their foreign minister said in a warning to the deputy foreign minister said in a warning to us. Cut 2. Number 2.
If the Americans decide to get involved militarily, we have no choice but to retaliate wherever we find the targets necessary to be acted upon. So that is clear and simple, because we are acting in self-defense.
So they said we will retaliate. If you're in the Pentagon or you're in the Situation Room, what are you ready? What does that mean to you? And who should be on alert? And where are they located?
Well, let's remember what the U.S. has. The U.S. is very exposed in the Middle East. You have 40,000 U.S. troops in the Middle East right now at bases across the Middle East. You have very static air bases in the UAE, in Qatar, and then you have the Navy base in Bahrain. Those are three bases that are very vulnerable to strikes from the Iranian missiles. They certainly would be trained on those sites. We have some air defense systems. We certainly would have beefed up the air defense, but air defense is never perfect, as we see with Israel. All it takes is one ballistic missile to get through that air defense. You also have the Iranians. I mean, I've talked to CENTCOM planners for years about this operation, and what they anticipate is that the Iranians would then mine the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy could then demine it, but that will take about a week. In the meantime, do the Iranians get off a lucky shot and strike a U.S. aircraft carrier, for instance, or we saw how the Houthis, they didn't get lucky, but they got awfully close in the Red Sea, and that was just the Houthis. So I would say that there is a grave concern. You also have troops in Syria at small outposts. You have troops based in Iraq, and they are very, very vulnerable. And the U.S. military knows that. Now, they've taken they've tried to mitigate some of that. You also have embassies across the Middle East. Let's not forget that the Iranians usually act in an asymmetric manner when it comes to taking on the United States. Once the U.S. takes the decision to bomb Iran, then all bets are off in terms of potential terror cells, assassinations, strikes on U.S. embassies. Now, Iran is a bit on its heels right now also because of the Israelis after over a week of bombing and precision strikes. But they still are not out of cards. Their cards are at the lower level. The U.S. and the Israelis have cards in terms of the escalation ladder. They are still much, much more capable. And the Iranians also will be crazy to bring the U.S. into a broader war. They know that the U.S. has many, many capabilities that they don't. And so, there is a bit of bluffing going on as well, but I still think you can't rule out that proxies or missiles could cause the U.S. military some trouble.
Lastly, Jennifer, what do we know about how much the Iranian people dislike their government? And if they are wounded, might this be the opportunity for police just to let the riots happen or let the prisons empty?
Well, I think this is another unknown. I think that the Iranian regime is extremely unpopular. They controlled until recently the state security apparatus, so there's a great deal of fear inside of Iran. But that fear, if you hit a tipping point, and we always, we've seen in other countries, whoever thought that Syria overnight would suddenly be free of Bashar Assad and have a new government and be moving forward. These things they can turn on a dime. And so I think what the Israelis are seeing, and the Israelis have excellent intelligence, they're seeing that they're at a tipping point, and that's why perhaps they are now talking about targeting the supreme leader and trying to push the Iranian people to overthrow their government. The question there again is what comes next? We saw in Libya what came next was not exactly better than Gaddafi. It's easy to overthrow a government, but it's not always easy to regain control once you do so.
I thought the best line was, do you prefer the devil you know to the devil you don't know? The question is, the one thing we all agree on, this devil is pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. And I can see the temptation on the part of the Israelis look, everyone doubted the Israelis when it came to Nasrallah, when it came to Hezbollah, when it came to their taking out the leadership of Hezbollah and Hamas. But I think we look back in hindsight, just like we look back when the Israelis took out the Iraqi and the Syrian nuclear reactors. You sort of say thank you afterwards. So it's a really tough moment of decision making for the U.S. government in particular.
Absolutely, they did the West a huge favor for what they did and allowed Assad to be ousted in Syria. At least the potential for somewhat of a friendlier regime with all the problems that they have, at least friendly to us. Jennifer, it's an exciting, interesting time. Nobody better to talk to. Thank you so much.
I wish to thank President Trump, a great friend of the State of Israel. I thank him for standing by us, and I thank him for the support the United States is providing us in defending Israel's skies.
And that was Prime Minister Netanyahu last night. This morning, he got up and was in front of a hospital because the Iranians had targeted a hospital and wounded over 80 people, but the number of rockets coming in has lessened significantly, and the launchers, they're down between 0.5% and 75%. To get them down to zero, it is going to be wide open and Israel be protected. Will he get to that? With us right now in studio is California Congressman Darrell Issa from the 48th District on the House Judiciary Committee and Vice Chair of Foreign Affairs, who also served time in the military. Congressman, welcome back. Your thoughts about where we're at right now in this conflict. The president evidently knows the battle plan, is comfortable with it. He's just got to decide if he wants to drop the bombs.
Absolutely. He has to decide, can he get a negotiation to a change in the regime that is really permanent? And then I'm not talking about a change of leadership. I'm talking about a change of direction.
Yeah.
If they're willing to empty out those nuclear development far underground with international observers, great. If they want to say, well, we're going to take a pause. They've said it before. They've never done it. The same thing goes. If they understand that we're happy to see Israel do a ceasefire when we know that they are not building new rockets to attack Israel. Until then, Israel has to keep doing what it's doing on the conventional side, and we have to have the stick of, we'll hit that site if they will not capitulate on dismantling it.
So we keep hearing that there are some forces on the Iranian side, they want to talk. There's some people on the Iranian side that want to talk. The Grand Ayatollah just giving rhetoric out, bluster and rhetoric.
From wherever he is.
Right, which I hear he moved to a safe location outside the capital, but I'm sure the Israelis know exactly where he is. So I think we're past the point of talking. Do you say something to the effect of 36 hours? I need you to allow full access to all this, and we're going to blow it up. It's going to be destroyed, or we're going to do it without your permission. Do you give a time limit on it?
This is going to be a war of 6 to 12 to 18 days. This is not going to be a year and beyond. What Israel's already done and what they have left to do, they are going to be done dismantling the ability for Iran to fire missiles at them indiscriminately, their ability to produce, not just for themselves, but for Russia, those weapons, those drones that have been hitting so many people and killing so many. What has to happen is they have to understand time is not on their side. Yes, we can negotiate like there's no war, but Israel, rightfully so, will fight this war like there's no negotiation until or unless there is a deal that is verifiable, quick, and permanent.
So there's a report now out of the Daily Telegraph that there were 3 separate flights, Chinese flights, into Iran. And they put them down as destination. They file their plan as destination Luxembourg, but they don't get there. They go through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and they're 747-sized planes that could carry weapons. Here's the quote. Aviation experts have noted that the type of plane used, the Boeing 747, are commonly used for transporting military equipment, weapons, and hired to fly government contract orders. What should we do about this?
We may have to assist Israel in taking those out. And, whether they're taken out in the air or they're taken out the moment they land, we do have eyes on every part of Iran. And with our support, Israel can be ready to strike and should. Resupply with the Russian surrogates cannot be tolerated. Resupply of Iran at this point cannot be tolerated. And if China and Russia want to help Iran, they have to understand China depends on the oil from Iran. We could have allowed Israel to shut that off. We could have intercepted the ships leaving Iran. We haven't done that. But that's another piece of real leverage we have. Have
the Israelis done damage to the energy sector, non-nuclear energy sector in Iran?
Israel has been very restrained in the damage to anything but military targets and key, military personnel. That doesn't have to be that way. They could easily hit their ports that allow them to export. And if necessary, they could hit further strikes. I recommend that they not do it because the high ground that Israel has used of targeting very, very much military targets, minimizing collateral loss of life to innocent Iranians is very commendable.
Here's Robert Greenway last night. He's the former senior director for Trump at the National Security Council, Cut 9.
It's important to remember what the relationship is. 43% of China's oil and gas come from the Middle East, a large volume of that from Iran. It likes to buy sanctioned oil below market value, and that fuels the Chinese economy and also its military ambitions. And so that's the central relationship. They've been relatively quiet, in fact, extremely quiet about the current conflict and coming to Iran's assistance. We also know that a large fire in Bandar Abbas port was Chinese solid propellant for missiles that exploded and created a tremendous amount of damage just about a month ago. I think it's unlikely to see Chinese arms shipments under the circumstances to Iran. It's more likely that Iran may be removing material or personnel or regime valuables to safe haven in light of the conflict. I think that's probably the extent to which China is willing to accept the risk associated with the current circumstances.
How do you feel about that theory?
It's a good theory that the planes that came in went out with valuable cargo, which could include some of the most valuable personnel fleeing to a safe zone.
I'm looking at some of this video over the last day or two of people protesting against Israel for Iran. They are chanting for Iran by the thousands in New York. I don't know what the story is in Los Angeles, but I would imagine, where's this coming from? I told you 10 years, 20 years, let alone right after the hostages were taken, what is laudable about Iran? I mean, how does, having a heart for the Palestinians, how does that shake into this terrible regime that the people of Iran hate? How do Americans rally to their side?
Brian, some people just hate America, and you see it sometimes. But in America. But let's talk about who's not in that crowd. Iranian Americans are not in that crowd. The people who know and who have fled, the people who understand that that regime has killed their relatives and imprisoned a country of 91 million people. The reality is, who's not there tells us a lot. And the fact is, many of those people are the same ones that are anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, time and time again. I'm an American, born and raised here, and served in the military here. I'll tell you, no American would accept what Israel has had to accept for years in the way of attacks on their personnel, on their people, on their innocence. And so if we simply put ourselves in their shoes, we will support Israel every time in what they're trying to do.
So let's talk about immigration, which is so much a part of the California political scene. And we're seeing some of the unrest with these riots in Los Angeles. The mayor says the presence of the National Guard is making it worse. You're a Southern California guy. What do you think?
Look, Karen Bass was never willing to do real immigration reform that would help fix the problem. She sat by and was thrilled.
She's the worst.
She was the worst.
She was a terrible congresswoman.
She was pretty damn marginal, to use a word. But the fact is, what she didn't do in Congress is what she won't do anywhere else, which is come to the table and realize that zero illegal and a guest worker program, zero illegal and a merit-based immigration program, which Republicans are willing to support overwhelmingly, but we don't have a Democrat on our side, and she was certainly not one of them. That's what we need. Trump is giving us the space to do it, but I would reach out to every one of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and say, yeah, we need to do immigration reform, but we need to do it with a legal system that works for the employer, works for the immigrant, and protects people, and by the way, protects the trade in fentanyl and other drugs from coming over here.
So what do you take about the president came out last Thursday and said, look, maybe we have to dial this back a little and say the hospitality in the farms, rural communities where these people have been there forever, and if we throw them out, they're going to be replaced by other illegal immigrants. Maybe we should back off them a little bit. These are my words, but that's his sentiment. But yet I haven't seen a hard policy. What are they saying in Republican circles?
Well, I can tell you, when you saw what Governor Glenn Youngkin showed, which was a targeted hit on MS-13, a targeted hit on the worst of the worst in Virginia, because he was working with the administration to target the bad people. That works in Virginia because you have that leadership. In California, where our governor is obstructing any kind of removal, even of these known criminals, of course there'll be collateral damage. There may be an MS-13 person hiding out somewhere around a whole bunch of people.
So they're all going.
They're all going.
You might be a guest worker. The guy next to you is a TDA guy. You grab the TDA guy. Where's your documents? I don't have them. You're gone too. And the answer, Karen Bass would say, leave him alone. No, you can't, because you got to round him up. You're in the field. You don't know what's a security risk. You got to round him up and go. And then if their papers don't line up, there's no reason to keep him here.
Absolutely. And if community leaders, even ones who are undocumented here, if they're turning in these criminals and ICE is able to go in knowing exactly who they're going for and not have the risk of being shot or killed themselves, you better believe that's all they want. They want to get rid of these people that have been ordered deported or came here illegally and have committed crimes. And the president has made that clear, and I stand by his leadership, just not my governors.
Here's Mayor Wu, another just terrible liberal lawmaker, mayor of Boston, where she looks at ICE as the problem. Cut 24.
Too many communities have seen it happen right in their own neighborhoods, where masked individuals who are not wearing badges openly or identification are coming in unmarked vehicles, jumping out, snatching people off the streets. I'm just stating that these tactics are the opposite of what makes communities safer.
She has spent $1 billion in 2024 on illegal immigrants. They've already spent $830 million this far. That's a cost of $3,500 per family, $1,000 per person per week. What is your answer to this type of idiocy? I mean, it must be so frustrating.
You know, it's amazing that, you're entitled to say anything you want as an elected official, but you're not entitled to have people go, not realize how untrue it is. What she just said was simply untrue.
Right.
These arrests are being made subject to warrants and a vast amount of preparation.
Investigations.
Investigation. Do they come in unmarked cars?
Sure.
Yeah. Sometimes the lights are flashing by the time they get there, but sure, they come in. And they also come in trying to minimize their own threat of life and of those around us. But, these are the same people. These are the men in blue, except they're federal. And these people that are bashing the men in blue at a federal level, they're the same ones that don't support their law enforcement in Boston or in Los Angeles or in San Francisco and wanted to defund the police. This is just the next version of it.
Right. It's unbelievable that she's going to continue to, I guess she's being challenged by Bob Kraft's, I think, grandson or a relative who's going to be independent. When you look at what's happened with Karen Bass, Democrat, Gavin Newsom, 7.5 years, burying your state in red ink, in deficits, crime, homelessness. You once made sure through a recall that a Republican won as governor. His name was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know he didn't do what you want him to do, but you saw it happen. Is there a chance for a change in party leadership now?
There is, and we could use an Arnold Schwarzenegger again. Yes, people, had some problems. He wasn't, quote, MAGA enough.
He had to do what was possible.
But he did what was possible, and he stood strong for a lot of things. And by the way, the lights didn't go out during his time. The gas tax didn't go up. There were a lot of things he did that I think he deserves the credit for. And he cared enough to do it. He left aside an incredibly good life to serve in public office.
And being loved to 50% or maybe 75% being against you.
Well, exactly. You go from everyone loving you to you're lucky to get half on a good day. We could do it again. It's going to be hard. The numbers are hard. But around the country, Democrat strongholds are going to see real challenges by people who, like Governor Youngkin, who won, I use him again, but he won in Virginia by saying parents control their kids. And by the way, we want to make sure that the schools are open. When he came in 4 years ago, he came in with a message that they needed to hear they weren't hearing from the other party. And supporting safe streets and parental rights and common sense absolutely is going to be
Rick Caruso, I know he left. He's technically not a Republican, but he was a Republican.
Well, look, I want a direction. Rudy Giuliani is a friend of mine. He took this city in another direction. Michael Bloomberg, who left the party, continued to do it. And for 5 terms, New York got to be a pretty good place to be. And then they took it to hell. And I don't care which party did it. It was the wrong direction. So, I don't care if Rick Caruso wants to call himself a libertarian or the man in the moon. If he's willing to bring common sense back to California, we need to get behind that person. And by the way, not beholding to the Democrat Party is the biggest problem, because the extremists in the Democrat Party have made people I serve with that I know would like to do something different scared of their own shadow sometimes.
Which is crazy. You got to be willing to lose an election, do the right thing. Congressman Darrell, Issa, thanks so much. Always great to have you in studio. Marc Thiessen is standing by. We have all the latest information. We could be hearing about more military maneuvers as it relates to Iran. We also have a situation where the big, beautiful bill that has to pass for the Trump agenda to be successful is working its way through the Senate. They only have a couple more weeks, and they'll hand something to the House that maybe will be acceptable, but they have a long way to go. So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
President Biden said that he needed Congress to act for him to secure the border. But yet we just saw this month, the reports came out that not one single illegal alien that tried to come across our southern border was released into the United States.
That is Mark Wayne Mullen talking immigration. The border is sealed. Now time to fix the rest.
Number 2.
Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people to uphold the Constitution. When that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy.
That is President Obama, the professor. Dems in disarray, and the complaints are coming from the left. We bring you inside the story of the infighting that could keep the House in GOP hands.
Number 1.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other.
That is President Trump. He's got a lot on his plate, right? Will he or won't he? He knows the attack plan. He signed off on it. The question is, will he execute it? Will he drop the bunker buster after bunker buster, maybe after bunker buster, and finally end the Iranian nuke program because they won't go to the table and do it themselves? Marc Thiessen joins us now. Marc, Washington Post, Fox News contributor. Marc, welcome back. Your thoughts on how close the president is to executing this strike?
I think he's going to do it. It's only a question of time. Look, this operation can't end with Fordo intact. It's just that simple. Imagine the message that would send around the world if we were unable to destroy it. If the Chinese would look and say Trump isn't willing to drop a couple of bunker busters on Fordo, he's definitely not going to defend Taiwan. And Russia would be emboldened. North Korea would be emboldened. I mean, this is essential. It's like once you start something, you have to finish it. And this operation has to end with the total destruction of the Iranian nuclear program. The Israelis can't do it, particularly in Fordo. They can damage Fordo a lot. So what they can do, for example, is what they did in Natanz, which was take out the electrical power. And what that does is that stops that creates an uncontrolled stop within the centrifuges. And if they slow down too quickly, they'll break up as they go on, and it can destroy some of the centrifuges. They could destroy the ventilation system, which means you can't get down there and
it's all delay stuff.
Work.
It would delay the execution of the enrichment and the weapons. I want you to hear what the Grand Ayatollah said. Cut 1.
The Iranian nation will not surrender to anyone in the face of imposition. The Zionist enemy has made a big mistake, committed a big crime, and must be punished, and is being punished. The damage America will suffer if it makes a military intervention in this field will undoubtedly be irreparable.
You worried?
Yeah, just like they did after Qasem Soleimani. You know, I mean, so here, when Trump killed Soleimani, he sent a message through the Swiss diplomatic channel to the Iranians that if they killed a single American in retaliation, he would kill Khamenei.
But they did rocket the base, right?
What they did is they did a pinprick strike that didn't kill anybody. That was their way of saying, we've retaliated. But they warned us ahead of time that it was coming, so we could prepare. It was basically a face-saving move. They didn't kill anybody. They backed down. And so the reality is this is very similar to the Soleimani strike. Israel is carrying the brunt of this operation. They need us to come in and do a specific targeted attack on this facility because we have capabilities that they do not, and that no one else in the world has. And we're going to execute that. And then Trump told the Israelis, don't take out Khamenei. They had an operation ready. They probably have a moving target on him, and they know where he is. And Trump said we know where he is. And the answer will be, we'll take this out and say, you retaliate, Khamenei dies. So your choice. And they will back down.
Well, they hit a hospital last night. They heard about 80 people, and the Secretary of Defense, their defense minister, said essentially the Khomeini is now open for assassination, and as is the prime minister. And that's the problem with waiting. Yes, Israel's doing more damage. Yes, there's only a finite number of weapons, but people die because they're aiming for civilian targets. 400 ballistic missiles, over 1,000 drones, 200 have penetrated inside Israel.
I've noticed all the protests at Harvard about the genocide of the Jewish people.
Oh, it's summer. Don't worry, it's coming. Yeah,
they're protesting the targeting of civilians by the Iranians. It's quite remarkable. The streets are aflame in America with protests over this. I mean, it's always genocide except against the Jews. Look, Israel. The truth is, Israel right now is absolutely devastating Iran, and Iran's original plan was if Israel attacked them, they would send 1,000 ballistic missiles on Iran, which would completely overwhelm the Iron Dome. Hundreds would get through. There would be mass destruction and all the rest of it. And what the Iranians did so brilliantly is they launched their attack, and then they took out the entire Iranian general staff. And so there was nobody to give the order, which gave them time to take out a number of the ballistic missile launchers. So when the attack came, it had like 400 missiles, right, which was enough to get some through, but not enough to cause the kind of destruction. And now every time the Iranians fire a missile, the Israelis track where the missile came from and take out the launcher. And so that's the choke point. And so what's happening is now they're sending 20 missiles, 30 missiles, 40 missiles.
Yeah.
They have to send 50 missiles in order to get one through. And so they're conserving their missiles, and so they have to send them in enough money to get something through.
Good point.
And eventually they're going to run out. They're going to run out of launchers. They're not going to be able to respond. In a few weeks, they're not going to be able to respond at all.
The Israelis are saying they've taken out over 50% of their launchers. So Here we go. Now, there's a report in the Daily Telegraph that there's been 3 separate flights from China, which they write destination Luxembourg, but they don't go there. That they were filled, these 747s. They go through Kazakhstan, the south of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and they end up in Iran. And that these are the types of planes that you could put weapons on. What should we do?
That is certainly something that should be addressed diplomatically by the Trump administration with the Chinese. We don't know what they're doing or what they're sending, but I'm sure our intelligence community is looking in that, and that we want to send the message to the Chinese: don't get involved in this. You don't want to be a part of this.
So what do you think's holding up? I mean, Trump is trying to think this through. You got to think worst case scenario. They aim for the 2,500 American troops in Iraq. They aim for the 400 American troops in Syria. They go for Bahrain, Qatar. They could have sleeper cells here. If you're Trump, what are you thinking about in terms of retaliation?
The answer is it's the Soleimani plan. You tell your regime. The choice is, does your regime survive or not? Because we will decapitate your regime. If you kill a single American, we're not launching attacks against. We're not decapitating right now. We're not attacking Iranian leadership. We're just taking out a specific facility. If you go after Americans, we're going to kill. We're going to kill your top leadership, and your regime will be gone. So your choice is regime survival or not. And this is the other thing. I don't understand some people on the right who are saying, well, no regime change. It's like, I'm sorry, we're not talking about sending hundreds of thousands of American troops into Tehran for regime change. But if the regime falls, because they miscalculated and the Iranian people rise up, that's a good thing for the world. You know, Ronald Reagan was the greatest regime change president in American history. He brought down the Soviet Union and the entire Eastern Bloc. He didn't send any American troops to do it. That was a good thing. The people keep confusing, we're going to get into another Middle Eastern war. Nobody's talking about invading Tehran and occupying Tehran. We're talking about military strikes for a specific purpose. So, there's a lot of confusion about, because we went into Iraq and a regime change war, now all of a sudden all regime change is bad. The regime change in Syria was great. The leader of Syria now is meeting with Trump in Saudi Arabia. We like that regime change. We didn't do it. But if the regime happens to change and somebody who doesn't want to wake up every morning saying, how can I thwart America today? How can I threaten America today is in power? That's a good thing.
No, I hear you. Marc Thiessen, our guest. Marc, just looking at what the president's juggling right now, he's also juggling some fractures on the right. Steve Bannon, Tucker, I don't know, Laura Loomer, some of the, not Charlie Kirk. I don't think Charlie understand. The MAGA base does not want him in a Middle East war. And
That's not true.
How do you feel about it?
That's not true. That is 100% not true. So here's the thing. The isolationists in the right are a tiny, tiny cabal that have absolutely no support with the MAGA movement. So the Reagan Institute poll is coming out this weekend. I've got the advanced numbers. Here are the numbers on Israel. This is self-described MAGA voters. 90% of MAGA voters say stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is vital to U.S. national security. 80% of MAGA voters say the security of Israel is vital to U.S. security. 73% want to send weapons to Israel to help them fight Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, and 64% support Israel carrying out airstrikes to destroy Iranian nuclear facilities. That is MAGA voters. They're actually more hawkish than establishment Republicans. Tucker, Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all these morons out there have no support in the MAGA movement. They are what these isolationist Republicans have done is they're loud and they're vocal and they're a tiny minority, and they hitch themselves onto the MAGA bandwagon and try and the Trump America First agenda, and they're discovering that Trump is not an isolationist, and neither are the MAGA base. So they're completely out of touch. This is like an insignificant faction that just gets a lot of attention because they're loud and they have some channels to talk through. Tucker had to apologize to Trump. He called him and groveled.
I didn't know this. When was this?
The other day, he called Trump and apologized for criticizing him.
Well, okay, that's news because I watched him brawl with Ted Cruz. He looked like he was brawling with Trump through Ted Cruz, but we'll see how he feels. I'm friends with Tucker. I just disagree with him on this majorly. Yeah. Nobody wants war, but our enemies have a vote, obviously, and this enemy's been the same enemy for 46 years. But Marc, I want to bring you to what's going on with the surrogates. This is what's so astounding that Israel has done. They have Hezbollah's leader go on television with a Lebanese flag behind him. Hamas has not said a word. The Houthi rebels are Houthis first. That's their attitude. Why do you think that is? Even the militias in Iraq are afraid to use their cell phones, according to the Wall Street Journal. And the Houthis, shocking to see how Iran is deeply penetrated by the intelligence. What do you think is happening? And it's so significant. I don't know if I can have enough superlatives to describe it.
So here's the other difference between the time of the Soleimani strike and this, if Trump does it, is that at the time that he carried out the Soleimani strike, Iran's terror network was intact, right? The Hamas was strong. Hezbollah had thousands of rockets. All the militias in Iraq were in strength. The Houthis were strong. They had their ally Syria in power. They've lost all of that. Hamas is decimated. Hezbollah is gone. Syria is now in hands of a regime that's not a great regime, but they are allowing their airspace to be used to strike down Iranian missiles. Their terror network's been dismantled. They've never been weaker. right? So another reason not to be worried about retaliation. And they're literally on the precipice of losing power, the Iranians. And so they better be very, very careful in terms of how they handle this. And Trump pummeled the Houthis, for a month, and they're in bad shape. So all this is bluster from the Iranians. And look, I think anyone who thinks that Donald Trump, the guy who killed Qasem Soleimani, is going to be intimidated into not taking out Fordo, doesn't understand Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I think this is a guy who bombed Syria twice, who took out Soleimani, who launched a cyber attack on Russia, who killed hundreds of Wagner fighters in Syria when they were threatening our troops. I mean, this guy is not who destroyed the ISIS caliphate and killed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He died like a dog, as he said. This guy's not an isolationist, and he's not afraid. Mm-hmm. I have total confidence that Donald Trump is going to finish this operation.
Right. I think it's going to be the next couple of days, too. Marc, I don't want to see talks. Unless they say we're dismantling, you have 24 hours, you send in the inspectors, I still would be hesitant on that. But I don't want to see talks. We are done. We
blow it up from within or we blow it up from the sky. Those are your two options. Which do you want?
Marc Thiessen, that could be a great headline for your next column. But you have to make your own decisions. Marc Thiessen, thanks so much.